Um, Thank you all for joining tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Rory Vaughan, Chair of the Economy, Arts, Sports and Public Realm Policy and Accountability Committee. And before we start, I've got a few housekeeping points. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and so by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, either continuously or intermittently, I'll adjourn the meeting. Please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff fire exit, which is behind me to my right. Officers will direct you to the assembly point in Riverside Gardens. And as with other meetings, please can officers introduce themselves before speaking for the first time, and would everyone please use their microphones? Yes, item number 1 is apologies from absence. I've received apologies possibly for lateness, I think, from Councillor Lang, and I think we may have apologies from Councillor Campbell-Simon as well. Do we have any more apologies?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any declarations of interests? No? And item number 3 is the minutes. Do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of July 2025 as an accurate record? Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Just a question on page 8. I asked a question about the major roads and the congestion, and a question basically relating to Hammersmith Bridge closure. There was no recorded response to that. It was about whether the closure impacted on these particular roads. Now, there was a response, but it's not actually in the minutes.
Okay, well, subject to perhaps doubling back to find out what that response was.
Sure,
I'll
that's
be
fine.
happy with that.
Yeah, I'm happy with everything else.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, if we can come back to that, I guess it'll be the next meeting. Councillor Lloyd-Harris, thank you. So, item number 4, active wellbeing strategy. And so this report provides the background and initial action plan for the active wellbeing strategy, which we've discussed a couple of times, I think, before at this committee, including, I think, back in April. And please could I invite, first of all, Nigel Court, who's the interim lead for sport and active wellbeing, to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening. My name is Nigel Court, and I am the interim lead for sport and active wellbeing. Tonight, its paper presentation is to follow up exactly that in terms of our follow-up meeting in April. And it's to give you an overview of where we are in terms of the active wellbeing strategy 26 to 29. The alignment and the report is in council priorities and national direction. Lift Shift recognises that physical activity is a detriment of population health, not just a leisure activity. National policy increasingly measures success through health and well-being and the outcomes rather than participation rates. Councils are integrating activity into prevention, social prescribing and environmental design, and we are aligning our strategy with the national directive in embedding activity across sections and local sectors. So there's a huge shift towards demonstrating and introducing an active wellbeing strategy, and we are coming away from the physical activity strategy. So we're replacing it, and then we're adopting a symptom-based approach linked to public health outcomes. We're aligning it with the Council's commitments to fairness, inclusion and preventative health. And we are aiming to be one of the first London boroughs to deliver this. We won't be the first, but our aspirations are to be one of the first. And it's a very quick turnaround from where we were this time 12 months ago. Some of the fantastic work my officers have done and delivered in delivering breakout sessions and meeting with community groups has been key to actually how we've got to where we are now. Our vision is for every resident in Hammersmith and Fulham that they can lead a healthy, active and fulfilling life. Our objective is to increase physical activity and reduce inactivity, address health inequalities through targeted interventions, and strengthen collaboration across sectors to support the well-being. In April, I presented that our annual Active Lives survey, which is conducted by Sport England, we do have a new high of people that are active within the borough. We're currently sitting at 74% of people being physically active more than 3 times a week. which is sitting us around fifth in the London boroughs. However, those members of the residents that are totally inactive is also on the increase. So we've identified, and part of our action plan that we've complied are identifying key target groups that we want to work with. And there are probably some key target groups that we've never spoken to. So that's why it's so important that we are concentrating on a select number without forgetting the people that are active regularly. That's important. We will still work with those individuals and still ensure that they are remaining active at all times. Our engagement with the community and organisations. Our key relationship that we need to work harder on is with the NHS directly. We need to really get them around the table and to listen and work with us. We've got some fantastic voluntary sectors that are absolutely totally engaged in how we're moving forward, and community groups as well. Our priorities were informed by workshops and data analysis. We had individual support. We even tasked a former head of leisure for Leeds Council to come down and help us deliver our sessions, because he did this and he did it very successfully up in Leeds, which is one of the second biggest metropolitan boroughs in the country. So it was key that we had that support and alignment and guidance. We want to highlight focus on local needs and tackling inequality. Our strategic themes, we've based our action plan around 3 themes: active people, active communities, and active environments. In terms of confidence building programs, community networks and safe green spaces, working alongside with all colleagues from the councils, within the council, to deliver safe spaces, fun aspects of physical activity. And we perceive our team to be the gel that moulds a number of our colleagues together to ensure that we can then deliver an overall project and action plan. The following characteristics have been identified across all the borough's priority areas. So the members of the community with low active well-being often are from areas of high deprivation. There's a large percentage of residents from immigrant groups from whom English is not their first language. Large percentage of residents with complex needs and multiple long-term health conditions. Largely high-density housing with little or no access to garden space and community green spaces, and high rates of childhood obesity. There's a particular additional risk and prevalence of those characteristics, especially in the areas of White City Estate and Old Oak. In terms of barriers to activity, we've identified just a few. This isn't the whole list. This is something that we're working with, and we're identifying interventions that we can obviously make and overcome and deliver. Our plan is ambitious. We are looking to deliver over the next 3 years a high quality plan where we will need funding support that my colleagues are already working on, that are actually going out to deliver additional funding opportunities so we can really take task of what we've set out to achieve. Priority areas, and this isn't an endless list that we stay on, these are the priority areas that we've identified. They will focus on specific user groups: women and girls, people with disabilities, and older people. So within the action plan, we've been quite key in identifying that we will go into certain areas and concentrate on a certain demographic of that area. We believe we have to start somewhere. And so we are identifying those key user groups from those particular areas within the borough that we are going to start concentrating our programmes on. We believe that will improve our overall numbers of inactivity to improve and reduce, so our overall active community will improve year on year. As the action plan is a rolling document, we will identify opportunities that will bring improvement straight away. So it's not set in stone. We will add to it, and we will report back on an annual basis of where we are and what needs to be fed and led on to the next year. So the benefit of the action plan is it will be a working document. It will become part of the day-to-day lives of our staff, that will not just embed it and will deliver it on a day-to-day basis. The year 1 action plan summary is to focus on foundation actions, partnership building, governance and evidence base. We'll maintain provision for active residents through leisure facilities, and we will target interventions for inactive groups with tailored support. One of the first actions on the action plan is to set up a governance, and you can see through our active wellbeing partnership, key stakeholders that will be invited and delivered. I know Councillor Chabot-Verdier is keen to speak to user groups to work with us on that, to deliver and work with community groups to ensure that we speak to all aspects of our community that need our support in terms of them becoming more active. The breadth of partners, the local authority, the NHS, our community education, leisure, housing, and lived experience representation is key for us to be successful. I've mentioned it already, but we will be seeking and funding the opportunities. We will service the budget, grants, and public realm improvements, stress system-wide delivery and shared responsibility. So not just are we working on people being more active, we are looking to improve our overall leisure facilities across the borough. And so we are working on improved football facilities, tennis facilities, etc., etc. So we are working on funding and procurement around delivering a successful programme over the next 24 months, which will encourage people to become more active in what they do. Our expected outcomes are around improved health and well-being across all communities, reduce health inequalities, strengthen community capacity and social cohesion, and increased access to inclusive, affordable activity opportunities. This will be improved in terms of when we roll out the strategy, but the idea of the slide is to enhance. Even though we are a small borough per se, we have a lot going on, but there could be more as well. These are just leisure facilities, including our amazing parks and gardens that we've got across the borough. This graph doesn't produce and identify our fantastic community groups that deliver dance, for example, or opportunities to do other forms of physical activity. And this is increasing all the time. The good news is the recent development works at Linford Christie have made improvements to 7-a-side 3G pitches, floodlit facilities for netball and tennis. And following on from the development, we are seeing increased participation at that facility. So it's another good example of us going in the right direction. So the next steps for us is feedback from the PAC on priorities and proposed partnership approach, endorsement of the Year 1 action plan, and Cabinet member approval on the strategy confirmation of next steps. I will say that we're also included in the action plan, which isn't part of it yet, is the indoor leisure facility strategy, which is currently ongoing, and the play pitch strategy. And what that will do is give us an overall view of our current leisure provision within the borough and identify opportunities and future-led initiatives that we may need to take further. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Val Birchall, did you want to add anything to that, or shall we go straight to questions? Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very comprehensive, and you've touched on something which is very dear to my heart. So excuse some of the questions coming up. What I'd like to know is there's been a lot of talk in the social media about organised sports groups. Now, whether it might be the LTA, it might be the Football Association or others, coming into boroughs and offering to run their sports in that borough, but with the intention of actually purchasing the area they're going to be using. Now, to me, that sounds like a little bit of a sell-off of the assets that we need to have in the borough. So I'm just wondering, are you aware of that? And is it anything that you feel is likely to be happening here?
No, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. However, we are speaking to all of the governing bodies as part of our play pitch strategy of how we can improve. And there's been no conversation from their part to suggest that they'd like to go and deliver sessions on their behalf or even take control of the asset. They are encouraging us and working with clubs and hirers to ensure that more participation is ongoing. So as an example, the LTA are very keen on the performance of tennis courts within the borough because they're so well utilised. So they're really keen on how we can really emphasise and get more participation through harder target reach groups to actually come and participate for tennis in the first instance. So they're actually working us on in a positive way rather than obviously taking our asset away. So there's certainly no question within our borough that that's going to happen.
Well, that actually is that's good to hear. We sort of talk about the improved facilities. Totally accept that it's essential in the borough. We have had historically issues with borough facilities that have not been maintained, and they've been closed down, and then come back and say, well, it was closed down because of insufficient attendance. Now, this is going back many years. Most of these people were not councillors then. I think the chair was, which is the Janet Adagogi Leisure Centre. Now, that was extremely well used. It was a council facility. It was not maintained, and it was closed because the numbers only reached 80,000 people. And that was the reason for it. So can we have some undertaking that where anything that we're going to be engaging in, where it's improving facilities, that actually the council is going to maintain them? Because there's no point, as we did with Linford Christie as well, where the facilities were not maintained, they got run down, and by definition, it costs us a lot more money to actually bring them back to scratch. We have, but we ensure that this does not happen again, because we don't have the funding to do this again.
Thank you, Mark Raisbeck, Director of Public Realm. Appreciate exactly what you're saying. It is a lot cheaper to maintain facilities and keep them up to scratch. You'll have seen that, you know, we are doing asset surveys in order to identify the condition of those assets, so we understand what investment that needs to be made into those assets, so we can bring that to everybody's attention at the earliest stage, and people can then make an informed decision about the investment that's needed.
Thank you for that. Just one final question, quick one. You've mentioned these various areas that you're looking at: White City, College, what have we got? Townmead, East Acton. That's fine. That's good. I can understand why those have been selected. Could you tell me, are you keeping records for all wards? Because in order for you to select these ones, I assume there's got to be some information that relates to all wards. And is that going to be made, or is the PAC going to be made aware of those, please, as an ongoing process?
Thank you. Yes, part of our action plan is to ensure that we actually do more accurate reporting on various stages of people's inequality or health and actually overall participation. So the benefit of it is, going forward, officers will be given the opportunity to actually provide better records so we can report more accurately back to not just PAC but to everyone involved.
Thank you, Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chair. The concept of improving health and well-being through physical activity is a noble idea, and I wish the council every success. 2 or 3 questions I want to ask. Firstly, at paragraph 6 on page 22, the borough's average participation levels are considered to be good, with 73% of the borough population achieving recommended minimum of 150 minutes per week of physical activity. Now, 150 minutes is quite a low threshold. It's 2.5 hours per week. How do we increase that? And in particular, how do we attract children to participate in physical activity? As you're no doubt aware, children these days come back from school and sit in front of the screen playing games, as opposed to physical activity, going to sports grounds like I used to when I was a boy. So that's the first question. Secondly, I've noted in Appendix 1 that there's participation to be encouraged for disabled and women and girls, and there are concrete ideas of doing that. There's a failure of how that's going to affect BAME participation. it's quite common to find when you go to playgrounds that there is a kind of an ethnic segregation. I feel you know, you have very few people mix. I live near South Park, for instance, and when I go to the park on a Saturday, you have men of playing cricket in a hot summer's day, but they all seem to be segregated. There's certain groups playing amongst themselves, not mixing with the other groups. How do we encourage that? I think that'd be quite interesting. And the final one is the funding. As far as the funding is concerned, in an age where you have gyms which are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the amount of money which you have to pay to become members of the gyms is nominal. Is there any way in which we can actually participate with them in order to encourage more people to support the cause of physical activity? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Val Birchall, I'm the Assistant Director for Culture, Tourism and Sport. Thanks very much for those points. So I'm just going to talk about the first one, the active lives data that you referred to there. So the active lives data, that's the national data. What they measure is how many people have done at least 30 minutes of activity. So it's actually not particularly, it's quite a, it's not a very nuanced measurement, unfortunately, but that's the national measurement that's measured everywhere. So I think that you know that is an issue for, as Nigel says, we're going to try and improve the data collection, and we're actually going to try and combine with the data that we get from the leisure centres and from the voluntary sector to give us a much better and fuller picture of how people are participating. The second point, to pick up on the young people, we've recently awarded quite a number of grants through the King's Coronation Youth Fund for voluntary sector activity with young people. So that's one of the things that we can do, is to try and see how we can get young people outside of school to take part in more physical activity in their own communities or through voluntary sector organisations. And we're about to look to launch a second wave of that, which will try to target the areas that perhaps are maybe missing from the initial round of awardees, or where we can tailor them more closely to the objectives of the strategy. So that's what we're doing there. I don't know, do you want to pick up the next one?
Yes, please. Thank you. On point 2 around women and girls from ethnic minorities, it's one of the things that we as a team have had a lot of self-reflection on, because we identified that there's areas of our community that we have never spoken to. And it's important that we get, so part of the action plan actually identified particular sessions that we want to go out. So rather than women and girls coming to us, we're going to go to them and look to deliver sessions to improve. And the idea is that with the opportunity, going on to the third point about local leisure centres and gym memberships, etc., we work with Greenwich Leisure, and they're one of the stakeholders who will sit on the covenants of how we can move forward. I've spoken to them, as along with Val, about improving our overall management contract that we have with them. They're here for another 3.5 years running our leisure centres, and they're very keen to work with us and base our active wellbeing on the delivery and programmes that will enhance people back into the leisure centres, so they don't become barriers, they become opportunities. So we will, part of our action plan is to understand what the community would like to have and do, and then we will look to see how we can then make that happen. Because we can come with ideas about what we think is what's required, and we might be getting it completely wrong. So part of our action plan in the first 12 months is an education piece for us to listen and understand and be able to move forward. In terms of interaction with different community groups, you're absolutely right. And I think what we are looking to do is deliver a number of sessions around in key prominent areas next year, to deliver more open sessions, free to use facilities, so people could go, meet, interact. So when we have our wellbeing strategy or festival down in South Park, it's such a vibrant community taking full advantage. What my officers would like to do is one in the north of the borough as well. So we don't just have it in the south, we do it in the north, and we bring the community together. Because you're absolutely right, the only way everybody participating is everyone feeling safe to go to a facility and participate, whether it's outdoors or in a designated facility.
Can I just come back on the working with the leisure providers point as well, to say that I think what we can see is that as we get better data about what's actually happening. And as we can set out a clearer sense of direction, that helps everybody to work in the same, to try and go in the same direction as in terms of what's provided. And it also shows a bit more where the gaps are. So it just makes it easier to have those conversations with organisations like GLL about what's missing, you know, whether it's activities for women or whether it's activities of a particular kind. You know, it just helps us all to align a lot better because we've got the data informed strategy and everyone is working to the same objectives.
For the question.
Councillor Lloyd-Harris?
Thank you. It's just a quick follow-up. When you're talking about women and girls in sport, could you tell me whether you're going to have any female ambassadors going out and talking to females and girls? And also, it needs to be obviously age-related because there's an age where we might think they might be engaged in sport or need to be. They're not going to do it. They're not going to be interested. And I could probably give you a list of them already, but it's good that we're having females going out because some will not respond particularly well to being questioned by males. So it'd be better if they, you know, if they were happy with that, but it's clearly not, it's an issue in some areas. So if we can have some assurance that's going to take place.
To follow up on my report in April, we identified the need for role models and clear ambassadors, not just females concentrating on female sessions, but also males from BME communities that can be able to go out and deliver. So yes, that's already part of our thought process, and absolutely, because I think if I went and stood in front of young teenager girls, they wouldn't listen to me. So we know actually, well, my daughter doesn't anyway. So I think that from our point of view, we will get the right people in front of the right audience.
Yeah, and we've started doing that, for example, with King's Coronation Youth Fund, where we've got a lot of girl-specific activities coming forward, which I think is really positive.
Councillor Patel.
Sorry, a short supplementary. You may have read in the newspapers, there's been a recent precedent where a local authority in East London prevented girls over the age of 13 participating in a marathon. I mean, that's the sort of thing which should be discouraged under all circumstances. How do you think we can do that? Or how do you get a role model, dissuade people from doing that?
I certainly wasn't aware of that. We would encourage all members of our community to be physically active within their lifestyles, no matter what stage. In terms of running marathons, we have an amazing club within Hammersmith and Fulham at Thamesbury Harriers that we work with on a regular basis, and they are super keen on delivering sessions with us to the wider community. So I don't think marathons might be the target, but certainly let's start short and small and work our way up. There's some, if you go to Linford Christie on the 3 nights that they are there, there's a fantastic variation of males and females, boys and girls participating on club nights. And a high number of young people, particularly young girls, are being recognised for special achievement awards through the GLL Foundation, who are then given full sponsorship. And there's a really nice, healthy split between boys and girls and all sports. And the idea is we've got a very good, vibrant young community. I think what we've identified is that probably there is an element of our community that we aren't aware of yet. And they're the ones that part of our action plan is that we really like to go and look forward and working with them so they become part of that healthy, vibrant community that I see at Linford Christie 3 nights a week.
We've also got a resident, Peggy Coles, with us. Did you want to come forward and, I don't know whether you've got questions on this item?
So, good evening. Thank you for these few minutes. My name is Peggy Coles, and I'm the founder and the coordinator of the Hammersmith and Fulham Dementia Action Alliance. So maybe everybody around the table here will know that we have been recognized as a dementia-friendly borough in Hammersmith and Fulham. So those good news came a couple of years ago. But the project that we've been working on right now, which is in part possible by the work that's being done with The physical activity, active well-being strategy is a dementia prevention program. And Sharon Lee asked us to come to the different PACs to briefly tell you that this is now happening. So a sickness prevention agenda is news. And it's news for the NHS, it's news for the local authority, and it's news for Northwest London. We are lucky enough to have had this program existing in Hammersmith and Fulham called Active Minds. Now, there are a lot of active things tonight, okay? I don't mean to confuse you, but what we offer in Hammersmith and Fulham is a series of free activities that happen in different venues from the north to the south, with the hope that there's diversity of type of activity, and also there's going to be something that's near where you live to encourage everyone to come out. The program started as a response after COVID. The funding came from public health, and it's for 18 and up. But the real numbers are for our residents that are over 50. So my interest is for the group that's older, and we had a carer come to us and say, where do we go to start learning about what we can do to prevent us getting dementia? What can we do for brain health? So a year ago, we started this conversation with organizations, and particularly with West London NHS Trust. So they provide our mental health and our dementia services. So on the 4th of November, we launched our program, and the program is very simple, and it's based on common sense. And I normally talk too long, but I think I can get this out there in its truest form. We invite residents over 50 who do not have dementia and don't have mild cognitive impairment to come to the memory clinic just behind the Apollo. And during 2 hours, we go through the science right now that's, it's called the finger study, and it has 5 key elements. That's why they call it the finger study, but also because it's based on the Finnish FIN, geriatric GER. So you know how they make these research study names, they make these kind of acronyms. So the key elements of the finger study are physical activity. That's why I'm here tonight. Number 2, cognitive stimulation. Number 3, nutrition. Number 4, doing things in a social way. So one of the kind of summaries would be, you don't want to go jogging on your own unless you're going to go to your book club tomorrow night. Okay, so the idea here, and then health checks to check on your blood glucose and your blood pressure. So we bring residents in to educate them about the science. There's no silver bullet, but we've got a lot of information so far. And the research tells us that this multimodal intervention, so all 5 fingers, our residents need to be following a new way of making healthy choices. They need to really step forward to make a commitment to this. So during this time, they'll sample a physical activity like Tai Chi or poise spinning, something that they might not have done already in their lives. They'll sit with a nutritionist, and we have a free app that we're downloading. The medical director is someone that's at the, how do you call it? Maybe the Dementia Research Institute and Imperial. So bringing these pieces together, and it's bringing these pieces together with Active Minds. Okay, this offer that's been existing, it's on the ground. There are facilitators doing things every day of the week, Monday to Friday. So we then do a health check, and then we sit down with the residents, and we basically refer them to attend activities that deliver on these 5 fingers. So the idea is a culture change, okay? The same idea that is coming out of the active well-being strategy. but we're also encouraging people to look at how they can care for themselves. And that's a concept that's near and dear, as Val knows, to the chief exec, about people taking ownership for the physical activity, for the commitment to healthy choices, that whereby they can do their bit to improve their own health and well-being, with the summary being that we have a healthier borough. So it's called Healthy Minds Together. So active minds is critical to the delivery of how our residents will get more physically active, but also that they will sustain their commitment to healthy choices now that they have this new information and the science, which we're going to have to update as we get the science from Imperial and UCL, that type of thing. So I hope that's a good summary. But I wanted to take the opportunity of a PAC to let you all know, and anybody who's watching.
Thank you very much indeed. And so certainly all the best with making, with the project. I mean, I think just on one of those points, obviously, I guess there's a physical activity strand to the Healthy Minds programme, whether particularly as it's based near Queen Caroline, whether it's the sort of, I mean, there are other interventions that we might be looking to signpost people towards, particularly where it will involve, in this case, increasing their their activity against the strands that you've outlined.
Yeah, thank you. Our whole philosophy the whole time we've been producing the Active Wellbeing Action Plan is to ensure that all of the good work, the fantastic work that's currently going under the Active Minds umbrella comes within the Active Wellbeing umbrella. It's important that they're not forgotten about, but at the same time, we are evolving in terms of identifying physical activity and people being more active. So from that side of it, if we will have a say in terms of working with, and the Dementia for Action Group is one of our key stakeholders that we work amazingly with officers and Peggy at this moment in time anyway, and that will continue. But we will be taking a focus on delivering the active sessions along that side. And if anyone brings anything new to the table, they will always be considered if it means that we can make a different improvement.
No, that's good to hear. Oh, sorry, Mr. Troy.
Chair, if you don't mind, Richard Shway, Director of Housing. We've actually been involved with colleagues on this, so it's not as though we're working in silos. So yes, there will be some overlap, and I totally believe about sports and leisure can change young people's in all of our lives. So we will be encouraging that and working with colleagues in parks and leisure and culture to make sure that we can actually implement that across all of our 99 housing estates.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. I wonder, just digging into some of what you've talked about in terms of this being active wellbeing rather than participation. So the series of questions here, I suppose, is how are you likely to measure? You seem to be sort of now, the idea seems to be being judged on outcomes related to public health, which is quite different to monitoring how many people participate in sport or do physical exercise, which seems quite a difficult thing to measure in a way, because presumably we're looking at measures of how many people sort of interact with health services of one sort or another, which is quite a long-term and not necessarily exact science. So I wonder if you can, whereas in part of the presentation you're still talking about, quite understandably, talking about measuring people's participation in various forms of activity. Can you sort of explain how you're going to look at both things and how they interact?
Yeah, okay. So I think it is quite a complex area. So the work that we've done with public health colleagues has interrogated the data that they're using, and what we want to do is align with the measures that they're using to determine whether people's health is actually improving. The information we get is the information information, much more about participation. So the two things will have to come together because they are sort of hand in glove. And I think it's what's been really positive is linking the active wellbeing and the sports provision to a discussion with public health colleagues and other colleagues, as Richard says, around the council, because it is a system-wide approach. So we'll be measuring the improvements in health that are measured by public health, and we'll be measuring how we're doing in terms of people's levels of activity and participation.
Follow up on that. So our year one action plan is a benchmark. It's a starting position in so many ways. On the right-hand column of the action plan, we've identified a number of participants that we want to target and deliver. And the idea being is that year two, then that will increase. And the idea being it doesn't go up by 10% or 20%. It's how far we can really take it. So certainly in years one, it is the benchmark for a lot of our activities that we're introducing for the first time.
No, that sounds good. So, I mean, I think the theme I'm getting at is it's quite a difficult way of measuring things because you're looking at the incidence of people, sort of hopefully people's health in terms of, we see increased life expectancy, whatever the less incidence of stroke or heart attack or whatever it might be, which is, and also the pathway between the link between what you're doing in terms of active wellbeing and those changes is how you would actually track them, I guess, is would be interesting because that seems quite tricky. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. If I just try and simplify it because I don't think it is complicated in the way that we apply it, or we need to apply it from a day-to-day level. Ultimately, we are focused on participation and ultimately, the number of people who are playing tennis and so on and so forth. But we also know that the more people participate in activity, that's good for their health. And the long-term benefits of that will be seen, but we don't need to understand that now to know that if people become more active, that's good for their health. And so what the strategy is looking at is those groups which are of low levels of activity. And it's how do we keep those people who are very active, continue to be active, but in particular, how do we target those groups that are inactive and get them to become active? And that's the simplicity of the strategy there, ultimately. So that's why we're doing the analysis from a public health point of view. We can see what particular characteristics the inactive groups have got. And therefore, that helps us to look for how do we engage with those inactive groups and listen to them and understand what their needs are in order how do we then promote them to become active. So our ultimate measure is increasing participation across the population. And in the long term, we would therefore naturally expect that to see positive health outcome benefits. But we don't need to wait for that. We'd be absolutely positive if we got our activity levels up from 74% to 84%, that's naturally going to result in positive health benefits going forward. So that is the focus of our strategy. It's as simple as that.
Sure. I mean, I think you should certainly focus or make it clear that participation is a key measure, sort of measure and yardstick as to what you're looking at, because I agree that if you try and measure health outcomes too much and don't think about how you're getting activity up, we're never going to, well, we partly might not see the link, and also really measuring that in a meaningful way may take some time. I mean, very interested in what you say, obviously, about, so I think in terms of the areas that you have talked about, so physical geographical areas you've talked about, those seem like the right, it's good that you've both done some work to identify them and will be targeting them. They sound like they're probably the right, from our knowledge, probably the right areas, particular areas to look at. Just interested in what to the extent that you've got to any of the detail of how you're going to engage people there, because some of this isn't really about, to my mind, improving sports facilities, because some of these people are obviously not particularly active in their lives at the moment, and we want them to get, I don't know, whatever it is, off the couch and, down the park having a walk or whatever it might be. But I mean, what are the sort of strategies you've got around engaging people, sort of first of all, identifying the cohort of people who are in, that sort of low active group, and then engaging and understanding, focus grouping or whatever it is, to understand what buttons you can press for them to try and get them from, you know, a very low level activity to, you know, a much greater one.
It was the following on from the two sessions that we had key stakeholders in the meeting, and the idea is that we got actions and ideas from key stakeholder groups in terms internally from the council, but also from our external partners. It was clearly identified that actually there was a lot of recognition and similarities in sport and leisure, in adult social care, in children's services, in terms of key areas of concern and opportunity where we can make a difference. So it very quickly became in the actions that identified that we are working in cohesion with our colleagues to identify, and they already have the detail. So part of our action plan has always been part of how can we improve action plans and strategies for our colleagues as well, because once another party is involved, and we can then add benefit to them. So part of our action plan and our strategy was to go out and speak to key stakeholders already involved in those communities, and how we can improve their work and how we can then move forward and actually make a better service overall within the council.
So just to add to that, this is the whole point, in fact, of the active communities part of the strategy, which is to recognise that there, you know, you can't lecture people into becoming what we call minimally active. That's how we're moving from being inactive to being minimally active. You can't just go in and tell people they need to do more, because that's not effective. But the kinds of things we could do by talking to people about how do they currently live their lives, and what might be a way of introducing some minimally active activities for them, or how do they see that? Is it, you know, the classic kind of get off the bus and stop earlier and walk, or whatever it is, but also just conscious that I've got colleagues here from parks. Like, you know, for example, if you're taking your children to a park and they're exercising, what could you be doing? You know, and there are lots of things that you can do that make it a bit easier for people to get a bit more active, and they don't have to go from 0 to 5K or whatever. You know, it can just be about those lifestyle changes.
If I could just add some practical things to that as well, Chair. So, you know, we know, you know, some of the reasons why people might be inactive could be due to, you know, their economic circumstances. So hence why, you know, we put in a number of multi-use gyms into our parks. So that's free access to equipment, which provides them with the opportunity to do physical activity. There is numerous programs we run for all ages, which our sports development team do, which give younger and older people access to programs to improve their activity, be that mental health, physical activity. And even through our leisure centres, we have a number of concessions in which are sort of targeted in order to help certain groups promote their activity. And what we're wanting to learn through this strategy is how can we target that even more at particular groups to get them to become through. So there are many real active measures we're already taking to try and encourage that activity, but we want to understand how we can drive that further.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very interested to understand your sort of tailoring, because I suspect presumably there are subgroups within all of this where certain strategies will work well for older people. I think you mentioned people with health conditions. I mean, clearly that could be many subgroups. Younger people, or those, as you say, who might be taking children to the park and, you know, want to do some activity themselves. So it sounds as though you will sort of, there are sort of sub-strategies within all of this, depending on some of the types of people that you are speaking to, who will respond differently to different incentives and different opportunities. I mean, some of those, I guess, might be about developing sports facilities, particularly where, you know, we've noticed, I mean, we've got some bowls clubs and we've got other bowls clubs, but those might sort of lend themselves more to getting, you know, possibly older people, for example, you know, active. And actually, I guess you've got a cut across there with sort of social inclusion and community activity there as well. So, well, I think I can leave the comments there in a sense, but I think we'll be interested in understanding how you are, the sort of more detailed work you've done to identify certain subgroups, how you're targeting them, and what the results of that will be, I think, as part of all of this strategy as well. So, yeah, no, it's there seems to be a lot there. I mean, just on that, in terms of, you mentioned people with health conditions, for example. I mean, just taking that as an example, are there any key ideas that you've got at the moment to help people there to become more active? Or is that, I mean, clearly that might be work in progress.
It's certainly work in progress, but I think it's to reiterate what the good work that the Active Minds umbrella has done in the last 2 to 3 years, that we've got a really good understanding of working with key stakeholders that they will then become under the Active Wellbeing umbrella. So it's important that we don't forget about the old, because we're evolving all the time. But the idea is that we know what has worked for us over the last 2 to 3 years, that we'll continue that good work. I think part of the focus, though, is really identifying those key target groups that we haven't maybe touched yet and got into the detail for. And I think that's what's important. But in terms of there's various different types of people with conditions that we are working with already. And I suppose what we are working more now than we've ever done before is getting our colleagues around public health around the table. And they've been valuable in terms of the information they're providing for us, so we can then make some valued decisions about moving forward in the right way.
Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Thank you. Just on that, are we actually engaging with the education department? Because Councillor Vaughan mentioned bowls, which I was a little surprised about, but I think that should always be encouraged. Now, there is an issue with that, and I raised this a number of years ago about the communication between sport and education department about especially bowls, because in my ward we have Bishop's Park, where we have 2 bowls rings. One is an embarrassment that can't be used. One is well used. We have one in Hurlingham Park that has been run down. Now there's a discussion about somebody that might like to renovate it and put in a cafe and everything else. And we have one opposite on Lily Road that's been turned into, I'm not quite sure what it was turned into, but it's clearly a lot of bowls around. So whilst we might have had these facilities, we're not looking after them. And I really get a sense that there isn't quite the communication that one would hope for, especially with the young, because we know some young people, the sport is just not something you want to do. I mean, if you're going to wind up having, it's some football that turn up, yes, they'll be happy and, engage for a while. But we've got to have the facilities. You've got to make it attractive. And there are some sports that children, teenagers especially, will go nowhere near. So if you're talking to the right people, fabulous. One of those must be the education department, to get more enthusiasm and more time into the curriculum as much as you can to encourage children to get out and play sport.
I think, so I'm not sure whether it's a necessary question, but I think probably heard it. I don't know whether there's a point. Sorry, Mr. Rose, I don't know if one can. No. Sorry, finally, no, thank you for coming tonight and presenting the active wellbeing strategy. I think I'm very glad to know that it's now going to be in place and we're going to move that forward, because we have talked a couple of times already over a little period about this. I think clearly you've heard the comments tonight. I guess in the chair I'll take the prerogative of summing some of them up. I mean, I think that understanding, in particular, getting those people, trying to encourage activity amongst those who are less than minimally active at the moment, I guess, depending on what the jargon is or the phrase is. And I think the work that the sort of strategy and that you've outlined seems like a good one to try and have a crack at that, in terms of the having identified places where there are people who are less active. Interested, as I say, to see how you tackle that, because there will be subgroups within those areas of people, and the strategies that you put in place with other colleagues, I guess, across public health, adult social care, housing and other areas, to try and come up with ways of doing that. I think similarly, we will also be interested, obviously, in the indoor facilities and the other strategy that you're putting forward. I think we would obviously want to see all those good facilities that we've got across the borough maintained so that people can use them. And we'll look forward to hearing more about all of that. I think we've had some comments as well about how things work with sort of women and girls, children and others, and we'll obviously be interested to see how that develops within the strategy. And also, of course, although we haven't majored on it tonight, how, you know, those people who are, we've clearly got a good high participation rate at the moment, and how those people, how people are already participating will continue to be encouraged to participate and keep active. So I think really great to see the strategy in place. Really look forward to, you know, you taking it forward and to discussing this on a regular basis as to how things are moving forward and how the strategies are being developed to try and encourage even more activity, and clearly bringing in as well the Healthy Minds work as well, where that's appropriate. So thank you very much for tonight's presentation, and sorry, we wish you well in terms of implementing the strategy. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Short.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, thank you to committee members for examining this item. It's very valuable feedback. You've identified some of the communities that are traditionally underrepresented and underserved by sports strategies, and it's really important for us to really get this right. First of all, I wanted to talk to our history as a borough. We're the home of sports, and we've hosted the Olympics. We have 3 stadiums, rowers, running tracks. I mean, the sports offer and history of Hammersmith and Fulham is quite potent. Sports really defines us. You know, Nigel and I went to the Thames Valley Harriers some time ago. They generated Olympians that competed, you know, for the Bahamas, Switzerland, France, Great Britain. I mean, it's, you know, we are the home of sports. The first Black Olympian, when he competed in the 1908 Olympics, lived on St. Peter's Grove. You know, we're very, very proud history, and this is part of this history. What we're doing tonight is looking at a strategy that carries that heritage onwards. I want to, obviously you've said it, Chair, and other committee members, this is a strategy we could have presented in the housing department. We could have presented in the economy. We could have presented in health, in education, children, because it is so cross-sectional and it has benefits everywhere. I'm not going to be able to make the point about the health element better than what the resident has made tonight. I think it's quite potent. Dementia is indeed one of the things that we've identified in our reports, and that this strategy is geared toward tackling. There is also, you're right, committee members have mentioned not going with a stigma approach. It's not about telling people that they're not moving enough. It's understanding what the barriers are, how we can help them get that mobility need. I was in Brook Green speaking to residents this week, and there are training sessions for workouts with chairs. You know, it's something that you can have, something that is easy to navigate, and there's simple things that everyone can do at home. The way I'm approaching the sports strategy as well is a key breaker of inequality. So we've talked about gender inequality, but the provision of availability of private sports facility is very uneven in the borough, and it's not necessarily based on whether the neighbourhood is affluent. I live near the Askew Road, which is relatively all right, and there was just no sports facilities. Whereas where I am now at an undisclosed location, there's just a very heavy choice of 3 gyms, you know, one of which is the Better Gym Network, which we're bringing back into sort of in-house-ish, and has very heavily discounted rates for people. So it's also not just about the availability in certain spaces, it's the availability across the borough, and the price remains obstructive for many, many people. And finally, it's about social mixity and cohesion. There's no nationality, creed, or gender when people fight together in a team against an opponent, hopefully out of borough usually. But, you know, when you've got a sports team representing us somewhere, when you've got dance teams, dance teams, you know, they make us proud, but it also means that the people within that team, just there's no class, there's no race, there's no nationality. It's LBHF people joining forces to work together to make us proud. So thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you very much to all the work that's gone into the sports strategy. I'm very happy to just be piggybacking off the back of it, but really it's a work that has gone on for months and months, even before me. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chortverdier. I think we'll leave it there. I think you've put a nice coda on the end of the report, and yeah, very much look forward to seeing the strategy in action. Okay, thank you. So without too much further ado, we'll come on to item number 5, which is the Play Transformation Programme 2025 to 2028. So just let resident officers leave. So thank you very much. I understand the report provides an overview of the current condition of Hammersmith and Fulham's playgrounds and outlines the development of the 2025 to 2028 Play Transformation Programme, which is going to see an £8.3 million investment across the borough. So I think I'm inviting, first of all, Jessica Bastock, who's the head of Parks and Cemeteries, to introduce the report, who will be supported by Hugo Tatum-Ross, who's the Parks Project Officer. So thank you for coming on tonight, and we look forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I'm Jessica Bastock, the Interim Head of Parks and Cemeteries. So as an overview of playground transformation, as you mentioned, it's a 3-year programme seeing 8.3 million invested in playgrounds across the borough. This also includes creating what we call some exemplar play facilities. So these are large-scale facilities where we're investing a substantial amount of money to increase play there and make it a space where hopefully out-of-borough people will also come into our borough to use our play. We want all of our projects to be developed in conjunction with our residents, local stakeholders, park users. And we want what we deliver to meet the needs of our communities within the borough as well. And also, as part of this investment, we'll talk a lot, and I think throughout the slides we've got tonight, you'll see lots of images of playgrounds for children, but we actually see play as wider. So we want to encourage play through all the ages. So as on screen now, you'll see a chessboard. So having elements like that, or also things like petanque. So we want to try and gauge and get feedback on where these sorts of facilities might be wanted within the borough. So we're currently developing a programme for the 3 years. This all started from an independent review that we had done of all of our Parks and Open Spaces playground. So this independent review scored all of our play facilities on 15 different topics, from accessibility, furniture, play value, aesthetics. So we've got that data on all of our play areas. And then we're also linking into that. We have quarterly inspections of all our play areas, so we can understand how they are. Are they coming towards their end of life in terms of play facilities there? And then we're also taking into consideration the data we get from our residents in terms of inquiries, complaints, and all of that information to build that evidence to feed into the programme. And then lastly, lastly, also the funding available. So as noted in the report, the funding is predominantly coming from planning. So that's Section 106 funding, which is very area specific. So we have to spend it within that certain area. And then we've also got SIL funding, so Community Infrastructure Levy, which we can move around the borough a bit more. So where that can go more where the funding is needed. So we taking all of this into consideration to try and create a programme. I'll pass over to Hugo now just to explain more about the current works we have in the borough in terms of play, so outside of this.
Yeah, thank you, Hugo Ross-Tatum, Parks Project Officer. So this is kind of just an overview of existing playgrounds that we are currently upgrading. So with the Bishop's Park, it's an overview of the under 8s and over 8s, looking at where play provision is lacking and what we can do to improve that. And as part of that project, we've also been working with the Youth Council to create a new space for girls, because they are kind of they're seen as a undervalued, or there's a lack of provision in our parks and open spaces. So this is going to be a kind of our first one in the borough, and that is kind of just come out. Tender was just closed on that. And then the other ones are an overview again of Margvin Gardens, and under 8s at Wemmer Scrubs, and then a landmark piece at over 8 for Wemmer Scrubs as well. Additionally, we also have other projects which are non-play related. So we're working on some heritage things. So we've been refurbishing the balustrades at Bishop's Park. We've been refurbishing the Greek runner statue in St. Peter's Square. I'm working on a kind of overhaul of all this park signage, because there's quite a lot of signs that need updating, need reviewing, need adding to, and then building and infrastructure repairs as well.
Yeah, so that's an overview of where we currently are and what we're doing this year in terms of play and then other works as well. And then I'll just pass over to colleague Mark Fretwell in housing, who will just give an update on housing play.
Good evening all, Mark Fretwell, Head of Neighbourhood Services. So obviously where we differ from the parks team is obviously we're focused and our responsibilities on parks and open spaces in terms of HRA land. Similar to parks, we have quarterly inspections by ID Verdi, grounds maintenance contractor. So again, very much a risk-based approach, high, medium, low, and so we carry out those repairs. Again, similar to parks in the sense we've got a range of quality out there. We've got some modern, highly used play facilities. Equally, we've got those that are quite historically quite dilapidated, with poor construction and difficult to maintain. We're very much using data whereby, similar to themselves, inspections, resident committees, and the complaints. Sometimes we're getting complaints where parks are closed for a period of time or need reinvestment, equally through the tenants reps associations. What we'll be looking at really is looking at the need, making sure we're ensuring it's resident led through co-production, looking at evidence-based need and demand through consultation, making sure we have the most impact for the sites that are identified for ourselves. We've provisionally been offered 3 sites to improve, so be looking at where we can sort of affect the most users, particularly those some distance from sort of current park provision. Utilising more of a partnership approach, engaging with obviously the residents, as I've mentioned, but also with our RPs within the borough, so some of the major providers, working with local councillors and the TRAs. The other part, just to mention, and the final piece, is we're doing a separate piece of work at Ivor Place Playground. This is a separate project for West Kensington Gibbs Green around the Earls Court Consortium. So again, that's a very modern, we're looking to invest potentially £300,000 to £350,000, utilising sort of natural play, intergenerational activities, modern, creating a civic square, very much looking at secure by design, so sort of designing out antisocial behaviour in that area and making it sort of a space for all. So that's in its early development as well. That's all for me for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So in terms of our approach to this, as I've said, currently we're developing our programme, so trying to focus in on year 1 and then also year 2 and 3, so we can ensure that we're able to deliver the full programme. The way these will work is each individual park will go through a period of consultation, and I've got a couple of more slides on that later. And then we go through the procurement of the works and then finally the delivery of the schemes. So on consultation and engagement, we want to work closely with our established groups. So for us, that is the Friends of Groups, the Parks Forum. For our colleagues in housing, it's their tenants and residents associations. Also our individual park users. And then also, as Hugo noted before, our wider stakeholders, so the Youth Council, Parents Active, DRT, and then also the creation of the Play Forum, which I'll speak a bit more on later. And then we're trying to, at the moment, devise our strategy for consultation and how that might be and the route we will take. So we're looking into consultation through a digital platform, but also then having in-person events and also the standard email, phone to be able to contact us. So on consultation, we'll do consultation on all of the playgrounds we are working in. We're looking towards a two-stage approach, and that will be an initial consultation to find out how are our park users using playgrounds, and the same for housing estates, how are they being used? And then trying to gauge what is missing or what doesn't work and what does work and what is needed within that park. And then following that, we will take all of that information and then work to develop a plan for that playground and then consult on that plan. So there is a bit of a fear of over consultation, but as it will be park specific, we're hoping that actually we'll get a lot of engagement within that park, and we'll try and do the consultation close to that park. So ensure that we can really engage with the users of each park as we go. As I mentioned before, we are trying to create the play forum. So working from the good work that's been done to create the Parks Forum, we think this will be a really valuable, critical friend to the work we're doing as part of the playground transformation, but also wider play. So the aim of the forum will be to enhance the opportunity to play for all ages across the borough using every bit of infrastructure possible. So whereas the moment we see the play forum focusing more on playground transformation within our parks and housing estates, the idea will be that this will grow into looking at things like play streets, working with events and other areas as well. So we haven't set up the play forum yet. We are looking into how that might be in terms of reference, and then we will hopefully go out with an expression of interest. So try and get people to come forward to be part of the play forum. We would quite like certain representation on that group. We'd quite like someone from the Parks Forum to also feed into the play forum, especially in the first couple of years as we develop this programme. We see it as internal colleagues as well as members of the public. So I think, as we mentioned in the previous presentation, we see people like education, our colleagues from sports and leisure and culture being there as well. And then as it grows, transport, highways as well, when we go towards the more play street element of this. And then, yeah, we would also like to see those external groups, so parents groups, friends of, and then potentially even looking towards bids to be part of this to encourage more play within our streets. So that was quite a quick overview, apologies, of the report that was given to this, but yeah, happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chavot-Verdier, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. So just to add a few elements. So first of all, again, thank you. Many thanks to all the people who've been working on this. It's a huge piece. We're very lucky to have roughly £10 million of investment to put into our 54 parks and open spaces. And this is for your feedback. There's three things that I've asked the team to focus on. The first is, that's the reason why these two gentlemen are here and I'm depriving them of their evening, is because I've asked the housing department to be involved in this. Now, I'm very thankful to the housing department for having heeded the call. This was to ensure that we had a coherent provision of play spaces across the borough, where existing spaces, local residents don't care about that and they don't want to know about that. But we, between ourselves, know that some playgrounds are ran by the housing department. I don't think people would have understood if we had had some really shiny examples of parks somewhere and some playgrounds that didn't get the upgrade. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that people would have thought, why this? Why not that? So that was the first tier. The second is around the intergenerationality and the accessibility of the design. So we sort of have very changing demographics in the borough. Play spaces are no longer just for young children. They should also be for teenagers. They should also be for young adults and children who are disabled, for them to be able to access and play space with their families. But there should also be spaces for social mixity with elderly people. And we've just talked about how it's important for people to be active. Well, these spaces can be places they can be active with younger members of our society. So that was a key steer, to have a great provision of accessible spaces for all generations. And the final steer was to look at a consultation effort that involved two stages, and Jessica has set it out well. The first stage is to ensure that we catch not just local residents, but also people who attend the park. So people sometimes travel up and down in the borough and from outside the borough to use our parks and open spaces. And it's using technology, it's using signs, it's using a combination of events and flyers to make sure that we captures the users of parks rather than just the people who live near them. So ensuring that we have the greatest amount of feedback possible, because it's going to be quite the engagement exercise. And then a second round in which the first round basically would be a bit more blue sky, sort of big thinking. What do you think are the problems? What is it you would want? Linking up with the friends group, refining a proposal that we then would put to people and say, we have some visions for what your open space and your parks and your playground could look like. What do you think? So it's a lengthy, we're keen to deliver some elements such as exemplary functions in Ravenscourt Park quickly. But there are some elements that will take time. It's a 3 years program because we want to get this right. It's not about just plopping a few swings where people don't want them and say mission accomplished. It's about understanding what the needs are in the first place. So welcome your feedback on this.
Thank you very much. I think there are some places that people do want swings though, so those will be needed as well. Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. I'm just wondering, when we're talking about this 8.3 million of investment, which I think is most welcome and appreciate the scale of what you're trying to do. That's quite impressive. Could you tell me how much of that is part of the Section 106 money from Fulham Football Club, please?
I can respond to that, Chair.
Okay.
It's not connected with the money from Fulham Football Club at all. It's completely separate from that.
Excellent. Fine. Because obviously the money for the rent and everything else in the Section 106 is earmarked for the park. But you've also here highlighted a number of improvements that you'd like to see in Bishop's Park, which I think are welcome. So this will be separate.
Can I just say the schemes that you outlined in Bishop's Park, the playgrounds, those are active at the moment and have been funded from the 106 from Fulham Football Club, but that's separate. So the 8.3 million pounds is in addition to that. So that's what's going on at the moment. The 8.3 million is coming in and will be utilised around the borough.
Okay.
Separate. Okay.
All right. Well, that's welcome. I was interested here in this where we have what did you call it? We're going to create a new space for girls. Can you please explain what that is?
Yeah, thank you. So it's basically a space for teenage girls. If there's kind of been a study by Make Space for Girls, which is a national campaign, and they've done various, it's actually quite international. There's a few projects over in various places in Europe, and it's basically creating a space where teenage girls will want to come and hang out in parks, because generally it's felt that there's lots of, whilst there's provision for all genders in terms of like multi-use games areas to play football and basketball, there is just this feeling that they are sometimes overlooked. So as part of this and using that inspiration of Make Space for Girls, we are creating our first place in Bishop's Park. And that involved, the engagement with the Youth Council and meeting them on site and answering their questions and working out what it is that they would like.
Okay, we went through that exercise with the Heritage Lottery funding. I spent 2 years on committees with stakeholders trying to ascertain what our residents and park users wanted. And we very much focused on what was not there, which was facilities for teenagers, which was why we wound up with this very successful skateboarding area. And many people thought, well, obviously, no resident is going to think that's a great idea. So we astounded everybody and said, yes, we thought it was a brilliant idea. Now, that is something that is used by people all over London. It's extremely popular. It's bringing, obviously, its own issues with that. There are girls involved, yes. I'm still not sure what girls want, because being female myself and talking to a number of girls, they're telling me totally different things. So I'm just wondering what that is going to look like. And that the beach area that we have there, there's always been an ongoing issue with it. It's called the beach, for those that aren't aware of it. It's the water feature, because there's no security in the park. it's great having facilities. We encourage all age groups to use our parks. But when facilities are broken or tampered with, because of antisocial behaviour, it creates a problem. So something needs to change there. And I'm just wondering what your views are on what you would be doing with the water feature area and the beach and the what is called the beach area.
Thank you for that. As part of playground transformation at the moment, we haven't identified, the only place we've identified so far is Ravenscourt as an exemplar piece, but we can look into the beach area, the sand and water area at Bishops, and to see if, what work is needed there.
Okay, it's actually in the report. Has been what you're going to look at is the over 8s, the under 8s, and I thought we had more play for those age groups. And it says the sand and water area. So I'm just wondering if there is something that we're not necessarily aware of.
In the current year's work, is this part of Bishops?
No.
So in the report, we do mention Ravenscourt in terms of the paddling pool area that we are looking to improve. So currently the paddling pool has to be staffed and ticketed in the summer. So we're looking to improve that into a new water feature area. In Bishops itself, the current 2 projects we've got are the...
So it's the over 8s and under 8s, and then for context of the teenage space is hammocks. They want an area to do kind of exercise and yoga, which would complement the gym, which is opposite. And they're just the other requests were just for additional seating. Really, the kind of feedback was as they like areas to hang out and see what others are up to in the park. So those are the elements that we installed as part of this project.
Okay. Just as a follow-up to that, those benches were put in there originally near the skateboarding area. They were removed after a period of time because they were not used. They were damaged, as were the table tennis tables. So welcome something that's going to be used. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure obviously the young females will as well. Can we also ensure, or are we going to be potentially using, I know this is an open question, different contractors to say the contractors that we use for gym equipment that was used for Rowbury Mead, because the Friends of Bishops Park used their name basically in registration to get the funding for that because the council asked and we were happy to do that. But it was almost removed overnight and we were told it was past its use-by date. And it wasn't in for very long. So I'm just wondering if we're going to be looking at more robust gym equipment so that everybody benefits for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, Hugo can pick up the part about procurement and how we'll move forward with different contractors. But on the materials that we'll use and the equipment we use, we are looking at that long-term approach. So whatever we put in needs to be able to be maintained. And we want to get a good lifespan out of it as well, especially because we're making so much investment at one time. We don't want to end up with a bigger problem 20 years down the line where we have to go back and do it all again.
So with the procurement, we would go out to either invite to quote, which is where you can select, several rates, established firms that have worked in the borough, or we can go to open tender, and that gives you a bit more competition for price. So that would be our approach procurement-wise.
Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions. There's an 8.3 million funding over a 3-year programme. Could you give us more information about that? Paragraph 17 refers that 7.2.5 million is still to be allocated. So what's happened to the 5.4? Secondly, there's 33 playgrounds across 55 parks and open spaces. I would like to have more information on that. I live near 3 parks. One is wonderful, South Park. It's got outside gym facilities, football and cricket pitches, and it's very well maintained. Then you have the Ilbrook Common, which is open land without any boundaries. The only thing there is a children's playground. And then you've got the Hurlingham Park, which has got nothing more than a running track and an annual polo match for 3 days. So it'd be nice to know exactly what the criteria is, because South Park seems to have almost everything, and the other two very, very little. And the final thing is the consultation and engagement, which the councillor, cabinet member has spoken about. Apart from consulting the Play Forum and the Parks Forum, I think consultation with local schools is very important. I think that's already been mentioned earlier. I mean, you know, for instance, the Hurlingham School is directly opposite South Park, and Hurlingham Park is sandwiched in between. And I think the school children need to be, and the teachers need to be consulted on that to get the maximum usage out of the parks. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So on the first question, so if they're 8.3 million, so the 5.4 we have, and that is there ready to spend. The other element of that is what we've called future funding. So that will come from future development happening within the borough over the next 3 years, where we'll then receive that money. In terms of the difference in parks, you are completely right. So for instance, some parks are more excelling in sports. So as you mentioned, South Park, there are lots more sports going on there, and compared to Eelbrook, where we just have the one play area, and we'll be looking to improve on that hopefully as part of this as well. So I think it's we can't do everything in each park, so certain parks have to be more tailored towards those. With, for instance, I think it's Hurlingham again, where we have rugby as well as other elements there. In terms of the consultation with schools, that's a really good point. And where we do have schools that are close to parks, a lot of our schools also use our parks. They will be part of the consultation process. And as what we've done with a lot of our highway works next to parks, we'll engage with the school, and through, for instance, their weekly newsletter to parents and guardians, we'll try and put links in there to our consultation about the park, because it's not only using the park, but actually walking to and from school. A lot of children will be using our parks as part of that as well. So we will engage with schools close to parks where we think it was definitely going to have a benefit on the consultation response, and also engaging with the schools who definitely use our parks for activities.
Sorry, one last question. I've noticed that as far as South Park is concerned, it's constantly used by St. Thomas' School, which is a private school, but hardly ever by the Hurlingham Academy, which is a state school across the road. Is there any reason for that?
It's a good question, and I cannot give you that answer now as to why, but I can take that away and we can follow that up as an action from this.
Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Can I just, sorry, as a ward councillor for those 3 parks, I'd have to say, sorry, I probably shouldn't say anything. I would have to totally agree with what you've said. If you said the rundown park, the one that is causing more problem, I get more complaints over, it would be South Park. I think it's, to be honest, out of all of the parks, we have some outstanding parks in the borough. We have in my ward. That is probably, out of the 3, is probably the least impressive. The fabric of it is appalling. It's well used. Yes, Hurlingham Park is more than an AstroTurf area or a running track. That was, back 30 years ago. It's a well-used park. The issue there is Fulham Boys School, who are using it consistently, and it doesn't give it enough time to regenerate. We have some excellent facilities there, but South Park, I would say, out of all, is an absolute embarrassment. We could do a lot better, but we are blessed with some good facilities. That is not one, and something does need to happen. So sorry for disagreeing with you. We're probably seeing different parts of the park.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd-Harris. Sorry, Councillor Job, did you want to come in? I'm not summing up, no. I was just wondering if, sorry, Mr. Ray.
Chair, can I also say just 2 things? One is that Councillor May is in a meeting at the TRA, so unfortunately she can't be here, so please accept her apologies. Secondly, is just to let you know that I think the working partnership we have not had for a long time with Play, and I think housing, working with colleagues in parks, will allow us to actually not just develop a new Play programme on our parks, but also on our estates. That will also enable us to also speak to our registered social landlords which we've got several big players here who have not necessarily looked at those play areas in a good context. So a prime example is Clematley, one of our biggest estates. The main play area there is actually run by Notting Hill Genesis, but everybody thinks it's me. And it's about trying to get them to take ownership, and we're starting to have those discussions about saying that we all need to work collaboratively about making a difference. And those registered landlords need to also take ownership, not just about their lovely social affordable buildings, but also the public realm at large. And we need to get them, and we will get them on board to help us to generate a more inclusive play area across the borough.
Thanks very much. No, I'd agree with that. I mean, actually, I think I haven't been there for a little while, but Factory Quarter up in Wendell Park Ward, which I used to be the councillor for, I think the quality of the play area there has deteriorated over the course of time. I'm not sure whether Notting Hill Genesis have done much to improve it. Hopefully you can persuade them using your good offices. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I'm sure I think the committee does, really welcomes this investment. Glad also that you've undertaken the condition report on the different playgrounds and clearly identified them at different stages of their life cycle, shall we say. I wondered if you could just tell us a bit more. So let me start with 2 or 3 points and see how we go. How will things be prioritised for upgrade? It sounds as though presumably you would be tackling those ones that are in the poorest condition first of all, but is there any other way of doing that? One that I'd throw in terms of the playground at least, is the Godolphin Road sort of park open space, which I think probably discussed this before, but certainly I think the play equipment there has been out of date. So I'd imagine that would be one that you might want to look at. The second thing I think is, in terms of this and in terms of the consultation, how do residents associations and others get involved? I know particularly in Cathnall Park, the residents association there have got some, are trying to sort of do their own consultation amongst residents really, to understand what people want in that park and how the playground, obviously partly how the park can be redeveloped as a whole, but also how the play area might interact as part of that. So interested to understand how people can volunteer to get involved, where there are some active residents groups who are looking to be inclusive of all residents. Sorry, why don't we go with those ones to start with? Thanks.
Thank you. So you're completely right. We will focus on those in the poorest condition to start with. And we have that as part of our report. And then at the moment, creating that programme, just ensuring that we're aligning the money to the right place and where we have the money for that. But it is the poorest condition we go to first. In terms of the consultation with the Residents Association, again, completely right. So I think with Cathnall Park, so we have the Friends of, but there is also a very active Residents Association in that area as well. So it may be as part of this where we have investment for a larger project. It may be going to that residents meeting as well as part of the consultation. So if it aligns with the consultation time there as well. So it's engaging both our park users, but also the wider residents groups, and also with colleagues in housing, their tenant and resident associations within their groups. So it's not just specifically on the park itself, but those wider residents groups.
No, I mean, that'd be great. I mean, as part of this, so I'd be interested to know what the timetable is for different parks when you've got that information. Presumably it sounds like you've got some work in progress this year. Presumably you're coming up with some ideas about which parks you'll tackle next year. It'd be useful to know those as local councillors, etc. I think in terms of, you talk more broadly about play as part of the discussion as well, and the play forum. So I think something that someone raised with me recently is whether there is, it sounds like there's partly this money that might be available to encourage play, particularly amongst children, obviously, with sort of employing potentially play workers. And I wondered whether that is something that might be considered, but also interested in how people volunteer for the Play Forum. I've certainly got one person in mind who's very active in, I think, London Play, who I think would want to be on the Play Forum.
So in terms of play workers, we haven't thought that far ahead. So this is still a concept we're trying to build around the Play Forum, general play that we're trying to improve. In terms of the Play Forum, if any of the committee have any residents who they think would benefit, or we could benefit from them being on the Play Forum, they would be interested, we would say, please send those details across. We will have an open call, so we'll ask for an expression of interest of people, but then we can directly email those people to say, please, you know, this is out there. If you would like to go forward with that, that would be great.
No, thanks. I mean, I think in terms of play workers, or I mean, it links with getting best use, I guess, out of the play areas, but also back to the previous discussion that we've had in terms of encouraging probably mainly young people to get involved in, you know, getting out of there, spending most of their time in their rooms, and maybe, you know, spending some more time in the parks, and perhaps feeling, I guess there might be a question about safety and security in some of the play facilities as well. I think, sorry, Councillor Charlotte-Verdier, if you want to come in there, I think we've exhausted most of the questions unless other people have got them. If you wanted to comment now, and then I'll sum up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chair. I think it's, first of all, talking to what the present situation is. So this year we found out that we had been awarded 3 more green flags by the organisation that awards them, taking our total to 25 green flags across the borough. And that's more than we've ever had. So that's a real positive. We've talked about this £10 million total. Obviously, that's the play and parks budgets put together. We are not adding into existing programs. So where there are funds that are already committed to improvements, and that's true across a number of areas like Margraven Gardens, we are not taking that money and saying, well, that'll be part of the 10 million. It's an extra £10 million, as we've labelled it. That's really, really positive. Some interrogations about the funding that are quite right. Well, we all know that we've negotiated more Section 106 than ever before, £3 million compared to the previous financial year, and I'm sure we'll continue on this trend. So I have no concerns for when and how this funding will come. Many of you might rightly ask, is there Section 106 that is ring-fenced, i.e. attached to a particular area, as is often the case with Fulham Stadium? Yes, that is true. There is 106 funding that is allocated to, say, Cathnor Park or the Wormwood Scrubs, but there's community infrastructure levy that is fluid in how it can be used across the borough to mitigate that. You've talked about what are we going to do, and I think the key here is not preempting the outcome of the consultation exercise that we'll carry out, just to be sure that we are going to put in genuinely what people want us to put in. I've been with many friends of open spaces and parks now, and very thankful for their time, and sometimes they'll tell me, look, this was put in, actually we don't really see it being used, this could maybe end somewhere else, or we could get something else instead. So that's making sure that we really respond to that will from people and users. As I've said, it's not just the people of Palace and Hurlingham who use Bishop's Park. People come from Munster and Town. It's not just the people of Ravenscourt who use Ravenscourt Park. People come from White City and, of course, your ward chair, Conningham. So it's making sure that that we get this right. But very, very exciting to be able to work on this. It's the borough's biggest single investment into our parks and open spaces. We're taking a very radical egalitarian approach in that we believe that all children should have spaces to play in. Playing is a key part of being well. We've talked about this before, but it's also a key part of learning social codes, learning to collaborate with others, learning to play, be nice. It breaks down barriers. So again, they're not just swings and shoots. They are genuine spaces where the future model citizen is built. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Charlotte-Verdier. And thank you very much for bringing this item tonight. I mean, as you've seen by the enthusiasm which the committee has launched into questions on issues to do with parks, either near our own properties or in our wards, we're obviously, is obviously a very important topic. I think we're glad to hear that there'll be a large engagement exercise to get views from people about what they want to see in their parks. Clearly, there will be perhaps a variety of views, but it sounds like you'll be able to bring up to standard, I'm hoping, quite a lot of the playground facilities that are perhaps lagging behind at the moment. Interested to hear certainly about looking at different sections of the users of parks, in particular the questions around teenage girls and giving them some spaces in, in this case, in the example being in Bishop's Park. So we'll be interested to see how, as part of this, you might develop some of that. I think you've also heard from us about using different contractors and some specific queries about different parks. And obviously, it sounds as though you'll be looking to make sure that these playgrounds and other facilities are going to be sustainable for the future. Also, engaging with schools clearly will be very useful. I think in a lot of cases there will be schools that are near to these parks, which are used often immediately after school by all of those children. So that will be a good way, I think, of engaging. We'll be interested to see what the timeline is for the upgrades, and obviously then how residents groups and others can get involved. Particularly interested to see whether, as part of the development of this strategy, sort of play workers or other people might be engaged to ensure we get the best out of these facilities and are encouraging and incentivising children to use the parks rather than necessarily stay at home for almost as part of the active wellbeing strategy. I think as well, and we haven't talked perhaps as much as we should have done about housing tonight, I think that upgrading the facilities in housing estates is going to be critical and will be of real benefit to all of those people who are living on those housing estates, particularly where some of those have come into some disrepair. And we certainly support your push, Mr. Sway, to encourage residents, other social landlords to do their bit to ensure that their play equipment is of a good standard too. So I think we've brought out a lot. We're really interested in how this strategy rolls out, and we look forward to hearing more about how the strategy is working when some of these new facilities are in place in 6 or 12 months' time. So thank you very much for taking part in the discussion tonight. So thank you for all of the comments. Thank you for taking part in tonight's meeting. And the final bit of business is just to note the date of the next meeting. And if members could note that the next meeting is scheduled to be on the 3rd of February 2026. And that's the end of the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for attending or watching tonight's meeting. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year, since this will be our last meeting.
Yes, we can.
We can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.